Jackie Capstick, and this is my podcast, The Natural Healing Reel. Today, my guest is Meaghan Thompson. Hi, Meg. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you. You look like you're chilly.
Yes, it is chilly in the mountains right now.
Right. So we're podcasting from the car and the garage, you and I. So that's just awesome.
You know what? I like no excuses, right? You do it where you can.
I love it. Right. That authenticity is where we're at, right? So you are an Akashic teacher, which I have never actually spoken to anybody who has shared that before. I'm sure that there's others, but I'm excited to learn about that. You're a Reiki Master. You're a coach for multidimensional, which you're going to explain.
Yes, totally.
Sounds, out of this world, multidimensional, which is great because we're in all kinds of different, moving through the different layers of energy right now. So this is going to be very informative.
Yeah, good.
I'm going to let you share. Give us kind of your background and where you, where this all started for you.
Totally. Yeah. It's so interesting. The New Yorker in me just kind of giggles at it because it's like, gosh, what hippie stuff is coming out? Like, how did I end up here? But I really believe our souls incarnated with our unique circumstances, like our unique soul curriculum, as we might call it, that are often really challenging situations that we are here to overcome and remember the truth of who we are, the essence of who we are. And so I'd say my whole path has been just a reclamation of like source and remembering the truth of who I am and who we all are. But yes, I was born and raised in New York, Long Island, New York. I grew up with a challenging upbringing. My father was an alcoholic and we didn't have much money. And it was always like a really challenging, like it just felt really hard. I feel like we grew up in we were lower class, but we grew up in a wealthier area. And so I always just felt like we didn't have enough, which we didn't. We barely did. Like we barely had food. We were on food stamps. Like it was a lot. And for me, the big catalyst for me was I realized that I was not stuck in my situation at a very young age. And that didn't make sense to my family of origin, I don't think all that much. And so I started traveling like as soon as I turned 18. And so I traveled all over the world. I've lived in Madagascar. I've spent a month in China, France, Italy, Spain. My husband's from Northern Ireland, New Zealand. I've been like all over. And I feel very privileged and very blessed to have experienced that.
Yeah. I'm jealous.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing. And my mom was always like, you need to go to college. You need to get a degree. Like you won't be able to do anything in your life unless you have a degree. And which I did. I did all those things. But I've learned so much more traveling and meeting people and getting to know people. And I found that so I was an anthropology major in college, journalism and cultural anthropology. And this will all make sense when we come back to the Akashic records. And so when I would travel, I found that like so many of us, no matter where we were, if I was like in the jungle of Madagascar, meeting with the Malagasy people there, or if I was in China, we all have these basic needs and desires. We want community. We want to feel safe in our communities. We want love and partnership and family. We want good, healthy food. We don't really need as much as we think we need in the West. I feel like there's it's the Tibetans will call it the hungry ghost, where we are constantly trying to fill that void. And we do that a lot, I find, in the West with like material things where we think we need more things. But I think it's like a deep lack of spiritual sustenance and nourishment that we're missing because, I think that's why I know for me personally, I've always been so drawn to different cultures and specifically Native cultures. That's what I studied when I was in university. And so fast forward to where I am today, and I say that I'm I'm an anthropologist of the soul. So
Love that.
yeah, it's so fascinating. I'm glad you love it because I love it too. It's been so fascinating. So I got pregnant when I was 23 and I had my daughter, and that was such a life-changing, altering experience to shift from maiden to mother. And in our world in the West, there isn't like a beautiful ceremony to help that usher on. It was just like, okay, that old life is gone. Now you're a mom. This is what you do now. And I was really like severely depressed. I was struggling. It was so hard. It was so hard. I had no family. I had just had my partner. And then within like 6 months, my dad passed away. And it was just so much. And I was like, I don't know how to handle any of this. I literally like couldn't handle it. But I had this little life that was so fresh and so beautiful. And I wanted to be better for her. And so that sent me on this healing journey. And it started off with health because I thought, well, my dad died because he didn't take care of himself. Like he was only 60. He could have had such a long life. And he died still angry and still miserable. Like on his deathbed, he was still angry. And it was like, I say this and some people get really offended by it, but I think it's important. His death was like the greatest gift to me because it was a massive catalyst for me to realize like, I'm not doing that. Thank you, because I will never be that. And I realized I had to make some serious radical changes in my life because I was going down the same path. I was just doing all the things I thought had to do in order to be successful, in order to have a good life, in order to make my family proud.
I love that you're sharing this because I think for myself, I felt the same way. Nobody prepares us for what happens to ourselves when I was a young mom as well. And I hear you. And it needs to be talked about. It needs to be shared and supported. And
yeah.
Love that you're talking about this.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad. And I'm sure there are people listening who can relate to that too. It's so isolating.
It is.
Right.
And it takes years to find ourselves again.
Yes. Yes. Totally. I mean, so my daughter's 11 now. Yeah. And I split with her dad. We're still really good friends. And like, we're all actually a big family. I'm remarried, he's remarried, and we do it really, really well. Yeah. I mean, we do it well enough for her teachers to be like, can you teach a class? Because I have had so many split parents who've come through here. And she's like, I've never in my 30 years of teaching ever seen a family work as well as yours.
Wow.
And that's been like the commitment, right? Being so committed to my daughter that I wouldn't let anything get in the way of my relationship with her, not even me and my own like BS.
Yeah. Well, we could use some of your counsel in my house.
Yeah, it's an adventure. It's an adventure. It takes a lot. I mean, I'm not saying it's been easy and like,
well, it's not an easy thing. And you're only, because you've decided that you're going to do it well, doesn't mean that your partner is going to decide the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I first met my husband and I was like, yeah, I have a daughter and my ex is in the picture. He was like, what? Like, you need to have all of these, you need to be going to see a lawyer. You need to do all this stuff, like we've never had lawyers involved. We've always just worked together. And he grew up in a split family, and his split family was really, really hard and really messy. And now my husband and my ex play video games together and they go skateboarding together and they're like talking about building a business together. And,
wow.
It's just like,
what a gift.
Oh, it's such a blessing. It is such a blessing. I feel very, very grateful for that.
So do you think that that's just getting over your ego? Because I believe that our ego and, being hurt or whatever that is, that keeps that contrast going.
Yeah.
I would say through that.
Totally. Totally. I mean, Bella's dad and I, we like still tell each other we love each other, which we do. We love each other, very much so. And when we split, it wasn't because we didn't love each other. It was because I was 23 when I got pregnant, and I was a baby, and he was 30 and he had a life and I had none. I had no idea who I was, and so I think a lot of it was a lot of self-reclamation and realizing how much I was projecting. I projected so much of my pain onto him because I felt like I was trapped. And it wasn't his fault. We both made the decision.
Yeah.
But I had to take radical responsibility for how much of that decision was mine as well.
Okay, that's huge because we can't see ourselves at all. That's a very big thing. Everything that we're seeing from somebody else, that energy, we're in that energy pattern, right? We're in that energy field to be receiving that. So we have to look at what part's mine.
Yeah.
To take our power back and to move forward. And sometimes I went a little too far. I was taking all of it on, in this work field and been here before, been on this road before. So, clearly there's more for me to clean up. Mm-hmm. And it was dad issues for me
me too.
Working through. I thought I'd had it all cleaned up, but apparently not the 0 to 5 age. The shadow stuff.
Yeah. The shadow stuff. I mean, that's big. And I still have stuff coming up around that. I think that memories come back or experiences come back when we've done enough healing that we're more than capable of holding it. The healing work that we do in our devotional practices, which brings me to the Akashic records and the spiritual work, is these devotional practices make working with the ego so much easier, because as the ego is neck up. The ego just wants to think about it, make it bigger than it is, protect you, keep you under that glass ceiling, keep you totally safe and protected from what you want and what you don't want.
Well, and for myself, it's fear-based. And usually that might happen in our head, or maybe we experience something and then we think we're going to experience it always. Yeah. Which isn't true. Usually most of what we're thinking about isn't the truth.
I know.
Which is really crazy for not moving forward. I don't want to do that because this might happen or that might happen, or I did that once and I didn't like it. And so we just cut ourselves off at the...
Totally. Yeah.
Tell me about the Akashic records.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if not everybody's even heard that word. So maybe explain first what that is.
Yeah. So I like to say that the Akashic records is much like a Google search engine for the soul, right? You incarnated here. You decided when you individuated from source, because we're all, in my belief system, we all are the same thing. We all come from source, and then we individuate and we come into these cute little packages of us on earth, or in my belief system, and then in understanding and exploring the Akashic records maybe multiple times, in multiple different lives and in different places, not just this planet. So for people who've heard of star seeds, these star seeds, well, that's something we look at in the Akashic records. What is the culture of your soul? And how is that impacting your life? And so if you could imagine the Akashic records like this great library, and it's multidimensional, right? So this is where the multidimensionality comes in, because this great library lives basically in the DNA codes of existence.
In the cloud.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's in the cloud. It's in the cloud.
I was like, hey, because it's kind of out there. So where is that library? It's in the cloud.
Yeah, it's in the cloud. And you just use yourself to access it. So anybody can access it, right? And I find that most people are accessing it if they're doing any kind of Reiki healing, or if they're deeply meditating, or if you feel like, man, I feel like I've done this before, or this feels really familiar, or why do I feel like I have these memories of a lifetime that I wasn't even me, but they feel so resonant and real.
The deja vu.
Totally.
Okay, I've done this, that feeling. Yeah.
Yes. Or if you go, say you travel somewhere you've never been before, but it feels like home, You're like, how does this feel
You're
like home?
I can't wait. I'm yearning to get back there.
Mhm.
What? And my sister told me that, and I wanted to go there my whole life. And I got there and it was like, oh, it's incredible. Yeah. It's like I belong there.
Yeah. Yeah. And within the Akashic records are these ancient memories that I feel the veil, and I know a lot of people listening, and I'm sure you feel this too, is like it's thinning, that veil between what the Native Americans would call the great mystery, or we can call the unseen. There's all these different ancient mystic teachings that have been basically talking about the exact same thing. And that veil is thinning. And so with my work in the Akashic Records, I primarily work with coaches and healers, and I help them understand, okay, well, this is your soul culture. This is how it's likely been showing up in your life. And yes, you are starseed. Yes, magic is real. Yes, all of these things that you've been doing when nobody's been looking, or communing with the guides, or connecting with all of these things have been real. Here's your validation for that. And then I also look at energy archetypes, or like a soul signature. To make that like super clear, it's like the astrology of your soul. So when you incarnate, say for me, I'm born August 28th, so I'm a Virgo. That's my sun sign, right? But with the Akashic records, it's like, okay, I have these certain energetic blueprints that stay with me for my soul for every incarnation. And so those align with the chakra system. And so to be really like clear about what that is, right? We've got their root to crown, and there's all of these chakras in between. And so when we look at those energy archetypes, it helps us understand how to step on a battery for success. It helps us understand like, oh, my operating system. This is how I operate best, right?
Interesting. That's really interesting that you're saying that's great. Carry on.
Yeah. No. I mean, when I figured this out, I was like, this is so cool.
Mhm.
This is amazing. And for me, and for a lot of my clients, I find it's just like a giant permission slip to trust yourself and trust the way your energy moves, and trust how you do things rather than doing it the way that your parents did, or the way that the latest Insta famous person is telling you how to build your business and make $10,000 a month. It's like, no, trust your energy,
Yeah.
trust your blueprint, work from your, like, what does success mean to you? Not what a famous person is saying.
That's huge. And I'm really understanding that right now, really coming into having an experience of just that, because we believe that we need to, well, we're all trying to fit into this box that society's made for us. And I think as we're, as our children are coming out more with autism and all of these different differences of learning, we're seeing more and more that just because you're not left-brained and you don't maybe fit into that box, society then makes it that you're not successful, right?
Totally.
For me, I'm on the creative side, and I wasn't in the left-brain side, but society, and for my poor children, I gifted them that, and I'm just understanding now that doesn't mean that you aren't as smart, whereas society dictates that. So I grew up my whole life believing that my sister's got all the brains, they're accelerating and graduating early. And there I was, it just wasn't the same for me, but I had the street smarts, is what I called it.
Yeah, totally. And, I find what's like so fascinating about that is historically what's like created revolutions in the world. Has it been the right-brained people? No, it's always been the artists. It's always been the artists. The artists are the ones who create the massive changes in society.
Yeah.
That's what happens, And so, of course, if we think of like an overculture standpoint, well, it makes so much sense to try to make them feel like they're dumb or not creative or not good enough, because let's keep them complacent.
Light bulb. What does Oprah say? Aha moment.
Yeah, aha moment. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was and I've just sort of started to have that information from other people, like having dyslexia or ADHD and some brain traumas and stuff like that. And it really then affects you even more. And then, on top of that, you've got more deficiency happening. And it's that, and then having going through the natural healing methods to help myself brain balance. It was like the listening techniques, and it was through music, and then your brain doesn't like that noise, and so it reverts itself back to its original primal state, which it actually really worked for me. Like on the third treatment, I was like, oh my goodness, I could, complete start and finish something for the first time. It was pretty profound.
Yeah.
So, and then being taught, from this lady that you're not that they're actually these people that have these difference in learning are usually smarter. I was like, what? I've never even heard that before. But you think about like all of the great people that develop things, they all had like zero education, really, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your ability to be creative is like how you manifest into reality. So much play and art and creativity was actually woven into science for a very long time. And then when, Constantine and the Roman Empire took over, it was like church and state science. And then it's just, the divide has gotten so big over the last, 2,000 years. And here we are.
It's pretty extreme.
It is.
Especially right now.
Totally. And it's like divide and conquer has been the way for so long when people are divided. And I think when people are divided in themselves, I find that the reclamation of my own spirituality, and, I grew up Christian. I really, really I enjoyed church when I was a kid. And then I was like, this is not right. This doesn't feel good anymore. And it was only in like meditating and getting like slowing down enough to be in my body, because I spent so much time trying to be out of my body, and to drop in and to do yoga. And then, Reiki really helped with energy work, and then learning the Akashic records and realizing like, oh yeah, I'm an old soul. This is not my first rodeo. And most of my clients and the people who are magnetized to me, it's not their first rodeo either. And we're here to bring back the memories, these ancient wisdom traditions to the present, because the way that we are approaching life and the earth in a broken way, in a divided way, from our own divided, messy inners, creates the mess outside. Right. And so, I was thinking about this the other day. I had this moment when my daughter was really little. I had this like very masculine boss that was very type A, and like, this is how life works, right? This is how you do life. And he's like, you need to be more structured, and you need to be more stern with your daughter and all these things. And I was like, how I feel? If I can teach Bella to trust her inner wisdom more than she believes everybody outside of herself, then I've done my job as a parent. That's it.
I love you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a child. Every 9 years, I had another child.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
The first child I had, I was never having another one. It was just so big. It's so life-changing, altering so much. 9 years later, I must have forgotten. The first 3 were 9 years apart. And they're all different, and they're these little souls. And as parents, we believe that we're here and we need to make them like us, and we're trying to just push them into those cutters, so that, and even more so now, I believe, just the competition between families or parents, or even if it's conscious or unconscious, it's there. How many sports are your children in, or are they A students or they're not, and if you're not fitting those bills, then you're kind of feeling like you're doing a shitty job.
I can understand that. Yeah, totally. I mean, we homeschool at this point. It was just too crazy with like COVID and everything. And California's like laws. I know it's been pretty good, but holy macaroni, California.
Pretty bad there, right?
Oh, it's been intense.
Has it lightened up now? Is it shifted there?
Yeah, it has. It has shifted, although there's things in the pipeline to make it so that like every single person who is employed, either self-employed, contract employee, or employed in any way, is mandatory vaccinations. And that's not how we roll in our family. We think that everybody needs to be able to make their own decisions for their own bodies.
I'm with you. I'm with you. The fact that we've never had that before. I think Hitler, they kind of did that same. It's like a rebirth of what they did back then. And when they've taken our choice away and they've put so much fear, like everybody, like people are dying, people are killing themselves because they don't see a way out. And it's not being talked about. It's not, people don't realize. And then I've had so many like people and heard so many stories of people that are life affected from the vaccine, and it needs to be a choice. And that was taken away. That's been taken away from us.
Yeah. Which, it brings me back to the Akashic records, because here we are, like when I do past life healings or past life power reclamation sessions, because,
Cool.
In the past, there's been some pretty terrible things as well. Like humans have been pretty gnarly for like the last at least 10,000 years. Things have been pretty messy and pretty bad. Like we just, a lot of war, a lot of harming each other, a lot of control. And so this isn't anything new, what's happening. It just feels new because we're like, wait, the last, 30 years have been like free. We could just travel whenever we want. We could do whatever we want. All of this technological advances have been so great, yada, 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 all the things. But the thing with like past life reclamation is we can see that as a species, we've been kind of doing this kind of stuff for a long time. And also we have beautiful, healthy, well lifetimes where we can resource power and bring it back into this lifetime. And so we could resource power of like confidence, or even like, I've done past life healings for myself where I was like, oh my gosh, like the power to really like grow food in like a really harmonious way, which we would probably call like biodynamic, and just reconnecting to the essence. Because when we feel like there's power over us, it's almost like we continue to give our power away because we feel like there's no way, right? There's already so much power taken away. I'm just going to give up, or I'm just going to whatever. And trust me, I've had my moments of that in the last 2.5 years where it's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But
That's really interesting. Can I ask you a question just on that note? So I understand that we made time. Time isn't a thing. We created time so that we could all kind of function together. And somebody explained to me that everything's kind of happening this way, all of our lives. They're not happening this way as we believe. And so everything's kind of happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. I find that really fascinating. Well, that to me, that feels like a theory of like multiple lives and multiple dimensions, right? Where it's like, I would say, the science behind it is there really isn't time, right? It is a constraint. We are making it up, right? And at the same time, there is. So how do we balance like our mundane human doing the dishes and the laundry and tending to, for me, potty training and all the things, while still remembering that I'm an eternal soul here to help others awaken? Can we weave that into the day-to-day? So I'd say, we can expand time and expand our relationship to time by being in the present moment is like the most simple way of saying it, right? Like just being here. You know, for me, someone who's experienced a great deal of trauma, be it physical trauma or mostly physical trauma, but it's either self-inflicted or from the other. Being in the present moment has been challenging.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I think like we can get really we can go like down a rabbit hole with that.
Oh yeah. I just, but just, I just wanted to clarification on something, you know, somebody who would probably know. And
Yeah.
so that's a thing.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. They say, and another thing was they'd say that when we're sleeping, we're off in these other lives.
Totally. Totally. And I think like, you know, maybe, and this might be a little conspiracy theory way, like whatever. It's just kind of interesting is like when we go into those dream realms, we are, right? We're not being inhibited by our bodies or by our ego or by any of that. So we're free to explore. But then think about how many people have really hard time sleeping. Yeah, exactly.
I don't sleep at night anymore.
Yeah, like challenging sleeping, right? There's so much overstimulation with lights and, you know, screens, and our whole like rhythm is off. And like, is that intentional or not? Is it malicious or not? I don't know. But, you know, a lot of these wisdom teachings would tell us to look at our dreams, track your dreams, look at the moon phase, look at what's going on in like astrology, what's happening at that time, document it, like take note, be aware of, okay, well, I had this really weird dream about, like, I had a dream the other night about my grandfather who passed away, like, I want to say 15 or 20 years ago. And in my dream, I was like, oh my God, he's talking so cognizant, like he's so clear. And he was telling me about alchemy and how to alchemize things. And he had he showed me this necklace made of copper and gold and stone and was like, this is how you alchemize. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, and I woke up and I was like, that was a message, you know, and for me, you know, I think about, okay, well, the maternal, the paternal and the father and money and resource and all of that, feeling safe in all of that and alchemizing all of the things that have prevented us from being able to receive and know that we're like the masculine, either in us or externally, is here to like serve the feminine, is here to honor and protect and help the feminine. That's at least what came up for me.
That's really cool. And I know they say to have like a notebook. I've tried it, but I haven't been able to be successful at it, to write down what it is, because you won't remember it the next day, which is always the way. Mm-hmm. But there's supposed to be big messages of that's supposed to be where we work everything out, but it always comes out so crazy. It is usually so bizarre that it's like, what does that mean?
I know. Yeah. And there's a lot of really interesting folks out there who do dream interpretation and so many good books. And I definitely am a novice at it, but I have always, my whole life, had the most vivid, fascinating, insane dreams. And I have had like, you know, partners or whatever who have slept next to me who've never dreamed in their whole lives or hadn't remembered to dream since they were kids, and then slept with me and been like, I had the craziest dream last night. I never dream. Like, I wonder if there's like, are we going somewhere together, or am I like sending off some kind of signal? I don't know.
Yeah, they're in your energy field. They're in that same space that you're in. You're obviously very, very clear and powerful, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah. and I find that I magnetize a lot of the similar people, and it's so fascinating because so many of us who are really clearly incarnate in this new timeline or this new experience that is so needed, right? We've been talking about it for years and years and years. Like, something has to change. You know, we're destroying it. We are destroying each other. You know, like, it's time to make a change. I find that so many of the people I magnetize lack are struggling, with feeling like good in their being, are doubting themselves, have some trauma that has prevented them from like fully wanting to share their magic, like the big fear of like the witch wound that if I share this, people are going to hunt me down. There's like so much healing that has to come. There's such a foundation of healing around that.
And so I've never really thought or had much conversation about the witch thing, but the witch, the women that were burned were because they had this knowledge. And so they thought that this magic was having this insight and knowledge that you're sharing. That they needed to go.
Yeah. And, I think it's also, sorry, my microphone is being funny. You okay still?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a bit quiet, but you're good. And you've got there's a red.
Oh, look at that. It's like a little rainbow.
Right?
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And it's what's so interesting is like, okay, well, yes, there's the witch wound, but there's also like this Black Madonna wound too, so basically just like a very brief history. We know if you've raised Christian at all that like Mary Magdalene was considered a whore, right? But she was not. She was Jesus's wife. She bore Jesus's children, and she was Jesus's like most confided in apostle. And so how did Constantine and the Roman Church benefit from cutting women out? Right? Well, if you think about it, women are extremely powerful. We literally cannot exist on this planet without women. Not possible.
Well, we wouldn't have any children.
Exactly. There'd be no
any
more.
man will tell you that.
Yeah, there'll be no more men. But a lot of what Mary Magdalene was talking about was the reclamation of the body as like the sacred space. And in a lot of her gospels, there was a lot of talk about how you didn't need to find God outside of you, that it was always inside of you. And then fast forward to the witch trials, a lot of these women were just herbalists who were helping other people heal with herbs instead of like the Christian praying over them or, getting rid of demons as like the cat or whatever the church was, the Protestant church or the Catholic church or whatever. And so, oftentimes I think the witch wound, it's huge, right? Even us in like an epigenetic way, we have ancestors who were murdered for working with earth and for helping others heal and for midwifing and helping people be born.
And, when you hear witch, there's this huge negative connotation and people don't even know. Like I didn't even know what really a witch was.
Yeah.
Until just as of late. And, just that knowledge is very important. Like it's just that of understanding that exactly what you're saying, that just the women were, I believe that's what it is. They were just too powerful and threatening. And especially you can see it now with the divine feminine rising, right?
Yeah.
Women are coming up into power and being in Europe and being, seeing those old Colosseums and stuff, and the women were always not allowed out. They were held in the dungeon there down below. So they had no rights, and it's crazy.
Yeah. It's really like a very clever, creative way to oppress humanity, and what's beautiful about like pushing a ball underwater is you can only hold it underwater for so long.
Right.
And
truth always surfaces.
That's right. And we are rising, whether people like it or not. And so I think healing that witch wound is powerful. And it's really, I can't remember what language it is. It's like from an Eastern European country. I'm not sure, but it's like witch translates to one who makes her own fate.
Love
and that I'm like, yes, here we are. We're making our own fate. We're breaking free of the boxes around us that tell us we need to be a certain way, do a certain way. And we're showing up as who we are.
We're connecting to source. We're connecting to God, which is within, we're like, I always think of us as the stars, when you're out in the country and there's not a light anywhere close and there's like bazillion of them.
Yeah.
And we're all just one of those little tiny stars in the star seed. There you go.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're all connected, even though we believe that we're all so different. It's so hard for us to understand that though, because we are looking at each other going, okay, well, how can I be anything like that? And I get all that now, but it took me a while to really understand and experience that as a knowing.
Yeah. I find for me, and I do this practice all the time with unity and remembering that like everyone and I are the same, right? We're all the same thing. It's such a conscious practice because how many times do I want to like maybe angry yell at the person who's alone in their car driving with a mask on by themselves? And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you afraid of? What the hell's wrong with you? And then it's like, okay,
you're in your car by yourself. Take your mask off.
Take your mask off, or
someone sitting at the bus stop by themselves out in the fresh air.
No, running. I live at 5,000 feet in the mountains and people are hiking in the woods alone with a mask on. I'm like, oh my God, and having compassion for that, like I find there has to be space. It's like, can I have radical compassion for these people and understanding, and then also have really healthy boundaries?
It's the fear though. It's the fear that has been embedded and for centuries clearly. And just friends, I have friends and they're just so programmed. They're in the program. And as we all were,
totally.
Yeah. And then it's just this awakening that we're having that hopefully this contrast is bringing more to awake. That's I believe the process of it, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it's
so uncomfortable that they actually have to go within.
That was my case, right? I was so miserable, so depressed, so afraid, so like nervous system absolutely out of whack. And I was like, I'm either going to die or I've got to figure this out. These are my options. I've got a beautiful, small, little perfect human who just came from source. I need to figure this out because this is not fair for her.
Yeah. And then the shaming and the guilting and because you're in that space and then the loop deepens and down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
There's just needs to be more conversation and I believe that there is, but it's still the shaming that I believe that we do to ourselves for not being that perfect mom, this, that, wife, all of it, like we're just scattered all over the place. How can we be perfect at all of that at the same time? You can't.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
No, it's not possible. It isn't. And for me, that's been like the biggest wound is not being perfect. And I'm also a Virgo. So like perfection is like, hey, isn't that the crown I wear? And it's been so challenging and shaming and guilt and yada, yada, yada. And I found that like the secret ingredient to shifting that is receiving. Because so often as women, we think give, do all the things, right? And then it's almost like, and I've seen this with so many women, it's like, well, we're constantly doing and giving and doing all these things, almost so we don't have to receive, almost so we don't have to slow down enough to feel our feelings and receive and like be there. And so I always say this, and I just did a podcast yesterday and I was like, okay, every time I say receive, you have to kegel. And one, it's just really comical, right? So you just kegel and receive. Every time I say receive, it's like a drinking game, kegel. But also it brings a mind-body connection. So you're literally bringing in a mind-body connection to like, okay, I'm safe to receive. I'm in my body. and then stretching the amount of time that you can receive. Because I mean, my family, like as much as I have those moments of shame or anger, or why am I the only one who ever picks up a dish? It's like when I allow them to, when I say, okay, I'm going to receive, it's crazy. Like my daughter will be like, you are literally the best mother anyone could ever ask for, or my husband. I see everything that you do. You are such a beautiful, amazing mother. I know it's not easy. I'm so grateful for every single thing you do in this house and for us. And I could be like, yeah, no problem, whatever, and continue to do the dishes. Or I could be like, well, thank you. I receive.
That's so big. And it's been, I know I've been experiencing what you're talking about totally right now. I have a little 4-year-old, and she says to me all the time, if I'm, because we're going through a transition here in my house, and it's tough, and it's tough on the girls. And my coach had me doing that yesterday, just going into my heart and being there with my girls from that space of me being that age with them as their best. It's so powerful. It's so easy. And just then the love, then what comes back, right? It's just so, the little 4-year-old, Mommy, you are so beautiful. You are just so beautiful. She sees it, I get upset. I'm like, it's my check-in to go, okay, like check in. I'm like, you are so beautiful too. Like, it just brings you right into the moment. I'm like, I love that you say that, Naomi. But it helps you receive. It helps you to say, because I don't know that we even give ourselves any of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is that like martyrdom, motherhood martyrdom, which I think is passed down from so many women who literally have had, that was your only choice. Your only option was to be at home doing all the things, right? And then it was you work or you can go to work, right? And then it was now you do both. Like I think to myself, I work, I homeschool, and I have an entire house. We've got 11 chickens, we've got a dog, we've got like a whole life going on.
That's great. How cool is that?
Yes, I love living country life.
What is your podcast called?
It's called, well, it's changing its name, but it has historically been called This Crazy Little Thing Called Life.
Love that. And you're upgrading?
Yes. And I'm upgrading. I had a very clear source was like, all right, this is the new name. And I was like, are you kidding me? So now it's called Welcoming Wealth.
Welcoming Wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So talking about receiving, doing the visualizations for abundance, and money is it's just energy. Yeah. It's just love, life. It's just, that's all it is. We just put it in a paper form, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I realized I was not doing was allowing. And so what I would do is, so I added that to my visualization, just opening up and being, I am allowing.
Totally. Right. You're welcoming. I'm open. I'm here. I'm welcoming it in.
We're not open. We're like this because we're living in this crazy, we're all trying to keep ourselves safe.
Totally. Totally. And then the nervous system's all whack. And when we are triggered and our nervous system is totally activated, did you know that all of our psychic abilities or an intuition just go offline? So
one more time.
So when we're triggered, all of our intuition and our psychic abilities completely go offline. They stop working. And so it's so hard to trust yourself when you're triggered, and think we're being bombarded as a society right now to be really triggered by external events. If it's not COVID, it's Russia. If it's not Russia, it's whatever else is the next biggest crazy thing, right? And so that's where, what we're talking about, these practices of coming back into yourself, working with your nervous system, tending to your own body, being in nature, having whatever consistent practice that brings you back to your inner God self, and building that muscle is so important during these times.
Yeah, I need to hear that today.
Good.
I've been working on that. Yeah. And when you have trauma and you have situations going on around you, then you just get more of it because you're in that energy field, and it just keeps coming and you're not really sure why, because you're asking, I'd be asking the wrong question, right? Like, what did I do? Why is this? Right. And then you get more, wasn't asking the right questions. Like, how can I perceive this in a broader perspective to see, what the benefits are, like just questions that are beneficial to be receiving something that would move me forward. But just having that awareness to know that we need to ask ourselves questions, and that's asking source or your guides or angels, whomever you're, connected with.
Yeah.
It's like, I grew up, I didn't have a religious upbringing because my parents were both, when they went to get married, their churches turned their back on them because my dad had been married prior. And that was not okay, apparently. And so I wasn't raised with the knowledge of any of it, not that about what happened to them or. So I remember going into church a few times, and it was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because it was very, very, this, that, and, as a young one, not having any understanding.
Yeah.
But I always knew that I always had that connection. That I knew that there was what I would see. I would see spirit and stuff as a young child. It scared the crap out of me, and everybody laughed at me and thought it was, lying, making up stories. So you just keep that inside, then it's worse, right?
Oh, yeah.
But that nervous system thing it's, and I've been watching Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist podcast. He's brilliant. He's got in California, I believe has a lab in one of the universities, and I can't remember if it's UCLA or, but he was a skateboarder dude. He's very cool. And he's got him and his dog, and he's just got brilliant information. And understanding that when you're going through trauma and your nervous system and you're having anxiety attacks and not functioning, that knowledge is so powerful for us, because he was explaining that, like, our eyes, as soon as you see something, they change, like, because your focus is changing, and then you go like this. As soon as you feel like any bit of fear, you can't see this, you see this. And it just, I don't know, it's just so powerful to have that understanding of why you're not functioning properly.
Yeah.
You're being, you can feel the judgment from everybody, which makes it, then acerbates it, because then you're not functioning even more, because then you're in this freeze frame of something's wrong, I'm broken, or,
Totally.
and you become more broken. Like, it just keeps snowballing when you're there. And I don't believe there's just not enough knowledge mainstream for people to be like, this is okay. This is what's happening. Yeah. And you go to your doctor and they just hand you some antidepressants and Ativan or whatever for your anxiety, which is great for maybe the short term, but it's just another Band-Aid. And that we really need to get in there and do this work that you're talking about.
I mean, it's huge. And balancing, right, the spiritual and the body, the metaphysical and the physical, because they're not separate. But we are so like head up in our culture, right? Neck up. Let's work from the neck up. Let's think about it. Let's figure it out. Let's, rationalize. Let's meaning make. It's like, actually, let's listen to what our body has to say, because our body knows the answers. Well,
and the fact that they found out that the heart has a brain. Right?
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's just fascinating. It wasn't that long ago. I don't know how long it is now, but it's
and incredible. The gut. The gut has a brain too.
The gut has, I'm like, seriously, like, it's, here's the thing, because you get these knowings, and then we're taught that, that you gotta, so then you go back up into your brain. Well, should I do that? Instead of following what we intuitively know, we're then back up and
which is, I want to just wrap in a little bit more about the Akashic records, just around that specific. It's fascinating. This keeps happening. So say when we look at your energy archetypes, if your primary energy archetype is a 4, which is your heart space, you need to trust that your heart knows. That is when you're in your best energy, when you're like most aligned, you're operating from that space. And like, what does that mean? I find that people who carry this energy are like literally the most wonderful humans. And their gift is so natural to just hold space for other people. It's like they just are there and let people figure out their own issues on their own. And they just hold really beautiful, sacred space. And does that become a challenge? Well, it becomes a challenge if don't value how important space holding is.
Yeah, I just heard space holding over the last few years, and it's an interesting thing because none of us do. We're always thinking about what we're going to say next instead of just
holding the space.
Holding space.
Yeah, I got a
think it's awareness, though, isn't it?
It is
having this conversation, so somebody hears it, so they go, "Oh, it's a natural knowing." When you hear it, you kind of go, "Yeah, of course," but it's not in our forefront of knowledge of what we think about.
I know, totally. And think about like,
okay, explain the number 4.
Okay, so the 4 is the heart, and so that is, again, the soul signature and the energy are operating from this energy archetype. You are trusting that your natural gifts and abilities are holding space. That's like basically why you incarnated here. And, the beauty is you help other people naturally find source, find love, find unconditional love by just holding the space for them to process all of their own things. Kind of the shadow side of that is one, not asking for what you need because you're always doing everything for other people, or you're emulating, or you're like showing people how you want them to treat you rather than saying like, hey, I would really love if you did this. You're just like doing it and hoping they're watching and then they'll start doing it.
Hoping they know.
Yeah, hoping they'll know. Oh, this is how you love me, duh.
So when you're doing people's Akashic record for them, there's different numbers.
Yeah.
And is it the energy centers, like the chakras that you're speaking about as a
totally.
number?
Totally. And I find it like really helpful for coaches and healers because they're already doing this kind of work with other people. And so it's like, oh yeah, I've been doing that. Or, oh yeah, like with the 4 energy, the heart, right? Oh yeah, like me and my husband or my partner have been having a hard time because I haven't been asking for what I need. I've just been showing what I need.
Yeah, I had a client ask me, I was a hairstylist for 30 years, and I had this client say to me, "Do you think you're a people pleaser?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't think so." Well, oh my goodness, every day, all day, until I saw her again, I was like, "Oh, I'm such a people pleaser," but just not thinking about it. But yeah, you're in service, and you all day long that it's you're giving, and yeah, of course I'm a people pleaser, and then you're trying to be enough. Yeah,
totally.
I was trying to be enough.
Yeah.
Or always trying to be enough, trying to be enough. It's it's a thing.
And it's such an interesting thing, right? Because like you're like, yes, I am inherently worthy as a divine being. Yes, I am inherently enough as a divine being. But why don't I always feel like I'm enough? Why don't I feel like I'm deserving? Why don't I feel, and it's like, okay, how do we, because I'd say enoughness, deservingness, feeling worthy are the top things that people come to me with. Like, what are you struggling with? Feeling like I'm deserving and worthy. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I know that feeling very intimately. And so, and people pleasing is just the fawn response when we think about like fight, flight, freeze, and fawn in the nervous system. People pleasing is like, I just want to make everybody happy. I just want to make sure everything's okay. I just don't want to feel anything that's going to trigger me. So I'm just going to do everything for everybody else all the time, right? And make sure everything's okay. And if everything's okay, then everything will be great and I'll be good enough. And, and so enoughness will never, ever be found in external validation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think that for myself, even and knowing and doing this work for a lifetime, it's so challenging at first to grasp that drop in.
Yeah.
And it's what I found for myself was the heart math stuff, just, breathing into my heart, in for 5 and out for 5, and you get that brain heart coherence. And it's really, really powerful. And it's so easy. I mean, there's so many tools to do it, but that's one for me that I can just, but just to sit down and do it. We won't even just sit down for a minute, right? To do this, and then, once you get going on your day, it's, I find it's quite interesting.
Yeah. And especially as a mom, right? It's so important to be able to do that. I find that we have to create the new habit. We have to piggyback it on an old habit, right? Because it's hard. It's hard to you're, especially as a mom, you are literally giving so much of yourself all of the time because they're little humans and they can't do a lot of things on their own and they need all those things. And so carving out that time though is so vital. I don't know about you, but for me, putting myself on the back burner becomes a habit. It's okay, I'm just going to take care of everybody else. And then I'm like a nasty, grumpy human and I'm not taking care of anybody else. So it's okay, time to switch. So I'm okay, 5:15, I wake up, everybody else is asleep and I get a whole hour all by myself where I'm maybe just drinking tea, coffee. I'm meditating.
It's vital. It's vital. I'm not sleeping well for the last bunch of years and there's no energy. The energies are all asleep. And so the nighttime is I'll sleep for about an hour and a half and then I'm awake and I'm wide awake. And so I'll get up and I'll do, some reading or writing or, watch podcasts or something, whatever I'm doing, stretching, yoga, whatever's going on that night. But that has really helped heal me. Yeah. And had I not had that, it's just such a busy house. There's just so many energies and everybody needs you. Mom, right? And you're just and especially if your cup isn't full.
Yeah, it's a lot. And then we
have to forgive.
Yeah. And when our cups aren't full and we've got all those energies, I don't know about you, but then I start to default to my trauma response. And my trauma response is, maybe I'm angry or maybe I'm I can't do this. I can't handle any of this, And it's well, then I'm just perpetuating the cycle of trauma onto my little humans. So the self-care is yes, it's for me, of course, but it's also for everybody else. It's not selfish.
So, and the other thing, which when we're doing this work, so I've been doing this work because this is a deep pattern. Clearly for me, I'm going through another pattern of a very similar situation. And it's frustrating because, I believe that I had done the work, but obviously was more work to do. And they say that if we do stay and do the work and you just hold it and just move through it, that we're healing generations back and forward for women. And I really believe that I have done that. I believe that I've completed a cycle and it's this natural knowing and it's bizarre.
Yes. I love that. I love that so much. One, because it's incredible and amazing. And it takes so much devotion to it because, it's not easier to default to the old pattern, but it feels easier in the moment. Right. But ultimately it's not easier.
No.
But it takes so much courage. And oftentimes you have so many people that are wanting to keep you in the pattern, even if they're friends or family or whatever. I found whenever I wanted to go complain about my ex to anybody, they were yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about all the bad things. And so I just made a commitment to myself. If I'm having a hard time, I don't talk to other people about it because I don't want to feed it. I just want to feel it.
Yes, I learned that. I learned that. I had to kind of do a nice, kind of a clearing out, and just having other people talking about bad situations or other people's stuff. And it's like I was too full, couldn't take it in. It was just too much for me. And it's just yucky.
It is. It is. It is. I've had to cut out like all of the like, can I curse on here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to cut
I
out
did.
like, okay, perfect. I am my podcast. I'm like always cursing, but I have to be really mindful when I'm on other people's podcasts.
No, you're good. Be yourself.
Yeah, no, I had to cut out like all the shit talkers. Like if you are a person who's just constantly talking shit about other people, which one of my best friends was, and I didn't realize how like draining it was for me until we stopped being friends, like in this last year about. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I have reclaimed so much of my energy and my essence.
Yeah.
It's insane. That whole world of just talking negatively, even about the world, is unhealthy, and we have to emote, we have to process, but there's something very like, it's almost like it's like evil. It's like this like icky evil that's like, yeah, it's the devil, right? It's like, don't you want a little bit more? Doesn't it feel good? And I think in like a physiological scientific way, we get these little dopamine hits when we do that. And so we want more. We're like, oh yeah, doesn't that feel good? Like I'm better than that random person that I'm talking bad about. It makes me feel better. But in the longevity of it all, it doesn't make anybody feel better. It's like you're paying way too much for it, right? Because it really takes away from you in the long run.
Well, and what we're talking about and thinking about, especially right now, is manifesting so quickly. Mm-hmm. So you're talking and trashing somebody else. Well, you're trashing yourself harder than you're trashing them. Yes, you are energetically putting stuff to them, which is nasty. Mm-hmm. And especially if somebody's having a hard time, why are you trashing them?
I know.
People love when somebody's down. It's very, and I think because we're in this competitive world where everybody's got to step on somebody to get somewhere. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad that we're in a place where we are shifting, and like this work, it's like everybody lifts each other. It's not about that. And it feels so good. Like it feels just how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be abundant and loving. And when we're giving like that, I don't know, it's refreshing, isn't it? But it's not our society. It's not what we've been taught.
No, and not in the past, at least. And so we're totally creating something new. But we're also creating something ancient, right? We're just like bringing back ancient wisdom, right? So one of the big things that's been a massive reclamation for me, and it's something that I'm moving forward to do a lot more of, has been women's circles, and like meeting consistently in a group of women every week for a duration of time. When women gather, like I always say, when wild women rise, we rise together. Yeah. And it is like so true. So I've got this devotion that I'm working on to like support these women who are so devoted in this way, like what we're talking about, to have that safe space. Because think about, I don't know about for you, but when I was growing up, it was like you were constantly competing with other women. It was like, oh, she's prettier than me. Or, yeah. And so much of us are healing that female relationship trauma. And so when we can be in like an intimate container with other women and just love them and see them and hold space for them without having to fix them or heal them or tell them all the answers or comment on whatever it is, just like being there and witnessing. It's insane how powerful it is. It's insane how like the things we request manifest so quickly. It's insane how fast we can heal, right? Like, oh my God, I'm not the only one. Just like this conversation, right? You were a young mom. I'm sure you're not the only one. Like, look, here we are. I'm here talking to you about the same thing that you navigated, that you probably felt so isolated and alone navigating. I know I felt so isolated and alone navigating. And I'm sure there's at least 1 to 100 people listening who's like, yeah, I felt the same way.
But we believe it's just us.
Yeah, we do. And it's so lonely and it feels like impossible when we're alone. How am I ever going to do this? And I think that's the future. It's like, it's no longer how am I going to do it? It's like, how are we going to do this?
Love that.
Yeah.
You're a gift. My goodness.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
so grateful to have had this time with you. Holy cow.
Mm.
Tell me, if people, so you have a podcast, and then if people want to, you have a web, can people
Yeah.
come
So they can
and
go to
connect?
megthompson.com,
And I'm
megthompson.com.
going to put that information on my website with our video.
Yeah.
So whatever information you can give me for people to be able to come and be a part of your world
Oh,
and
thank
learn
you.
and have their Akashic history.
Yeah. I would love
I
that.
I actually had somebody print mine.
Oh, cool. Was it
Yeah,
interesting?
yeah, very. Talk
Yeah.
about the number 4. I've been here 4,444 times.
Whoa, you've clearly got some soul curriculum that you've been
That's
working
before
on.
going
Yeah.
on.
Oh man, beautiful. No wonder you're like really saying the buck stops here with me. We're not repeating these patterns.
Yeah, I just, I can't, I've got source coming through so loud.
Yeah, I could see
There's
that.
not one part of me that cannot do anything different than what my truth is.
Yep. I see that. I can see that in you. You're so radiant.
You are
Yeah.
too.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Wow. So, is there anything else that we want to share before,
Mm.
I don't know
Dude.
how long we've been on. We've been on a little bit long.
Yeah, I know. I think we've been on for like an hour.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel pretty complete. I'd say the only little piece that we didn't really talk about was the multidimensional business
Yes.
coaching, but we really talked about it in like all of the different layers. I find that so many people, like healers and coaches specifically, get into their businesses because they want to help other people with the modalities and tools that have helped them. Right. It's like, I want to help people with the things that have helped me through my own personal evolution. And I find that when it goes from shifting from these things are amazing, they're so powerful to, okay, I'm a businesswoman and I'm sharing and selling these things, this opportunity to do this transformation, it gets really sticky and tricky, right? Because then all of the, am I deserving? Am I worthy? Who am I to charge for this? Is it source? Is it blah, blah, blah? And so I have, wow, do you hear that? Or is that me? Okay. So I have found that there has to be a multidimensionality to doing business. Like, yes, I'm really good at the structures and like setting up your back end to bring on an assistant and, all of those things, the digital world, I can help with all of that. But the bigger things are often the big energy work around healing, the past life reclamations that are like, well, what's blocking you? The nervous system recalibration to be able to hold the bigger numbers or the more clients, or to even just be really seen and witnessed, And so that's what I mean by multidimensionality. It's like really just a holistic approach to business. Like, yes, we'll talk about business, but let's talk about all the other things too.
So you're coaching us in how to have all of that in balance. That's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's either, like, I don't see any other way working for me personally, like just focusing on business I've taken so many business courses and I was like, there must be something wrong with me because I can't create success. I've invested thousands and thousands of dollars in all of these like strategies and all of these how to run your business and all of these like schooling systems and all of the whatever, right? The next best top thing. And then the moment I started integrating like the Akashic work in and the subtle body energy healing, it was like, oh, this is what's been missing. I've been chasing somebody else's success, not my success. And my success is different. I want to be home with my kids. I want to work, but not work a lot. I want to have a little farm. I want to be able to serve at a greater capacity, but maybe not always be super present.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to be giving you a call. I would love some support and some knowledge in all of that, because I don't have that. I kind of just was a dark night of the soul, was watching Brian Rose on London Real, and he was selling this broadcaster stuff. He just spoke to me. I wasn't even, I watched right to the end of his, segment. And then I signed up. I didn't tell anybody. And then it was a broadcast yourself. Well, what part of that was I not getting, that I had to video myself and then post it online? What? I didn't even have a video. I'd never even taken a selfie before. So like total newbie. And my like, I don't even, the whole social media stuff I suck at. And what I do understand is that it's just too much for one person. You need to have the assistance and support. Like you can't be successful without having people that you're sharing and lifting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the receiving, right? Being able to receive. And I find that, like what you're saying, investing from your heart rather than investing from your head, and yes, investing in your head makes sense, of course, at times, but when you're just drawn to something and you're investing in yourself, like even if you don't get what you think you're going to get out of it, every investment in yourself is a worthy investment. Way more valuable than going to Walmart and spending $200 on a bunch of shit you don't need.
Yeah. And then you get the bill.
And you're like, oh my God, why did I just buy $200 worth of plastic stuff? It's like, oh.
And we all have that. We all done that over and over again, right? Mm-hmm. Going for some shopping therapy.
Yeah. Oh, this is so beautiful. Thank you so much. I mean, I probably would have done myself up a little bit better if I knew we were going to be in video the whole time.
Beautiful.
But this is
you're
me.
Radiant. You're gorgeous. I love it. I love your toque. I love that you're in your car. It's just perfect.
This is my life. Yep. No excuses. That's my goal. It's just make it work.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's wrap this up, but we will be in touch. And are you going to write a book? Are you doing some courses? When you're doing all that, you're going to come back and share with us?
Absolutely. Yes. And this devotional circle that I was talking about will start in May. So
of May.
Yeah, exactly.
My birthday time.
Oh, when's your birthday?
It's the end of May 25th, but it's always been my favorite month. Everything here, all the cherry blossom trees are out and everything's growing and sprouting, and it's like the birth of everything. It just so magical. My poor girls, every time I go, oh look, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's great. My son's birthday is the 24th of May.
Oh,
and my mom is the 26th. So sandwiched right between you on either side.
Geminis. You got 6 of us there.
Oh yeah, lots of Geminis.
My mom would say, now which one do we have today?
Yeah. No, Geminis. My rising sign is Gemini and my moon is Gemini. So I've got so much Gemini too.
Gemini is awesome.
It is. We're so smart. And I'll just leave it at that.
Just leave it at that. And like to have fun.
Yes, exactly. Multidimensional.
Multidimensional. I love that.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
It's been a real treat to have you, and we'll catch up, and I'll post all your contact information for our listeners to get a hold of you.
Thank you. Okay. I appreciate it. Okay.
Bye.